I know that one of the reasons that robots fail is because you didn't create it yourself.
Hey, it's Walter here, and you're at the Think Profit podcast, where we're going to help you develop a rock solid trading confidence and avoid the potentially endless cycle of system switching. Right, Hugh?
That's right. We're going to help you develop a wealth mindset, develop a trading strategy that fits your core personality, and help you overcome the obstacles that stop over 90% of traders.
All right, Hugh, sounds good. You ready to go?
Yeah, let's do this.
Hey, Walter, I was thinking about automated versus manual trading. And what have you seen in terms of what point do people get to where they want to do automated? Or is it, do people start off with automated a lot of times, or do they end up in automated? What do you think about that?
Well, I think it comes down to control. Like if you want to be in control, like picking your lotto numbers, right? Sort of thing. So you feel like you got these lucky numbers, so those are the ones you want to play, versus allowing seeding control. A lot of back in 2008 to 2010, 2007, 2006, like there are a lot of like these robots out there
Mhm.
where people were getting into trading for the very first time, and they were just trading a robot. So they didn't really know what the robot was doing. It was a black box, and that was a big deal. That was a big thing. It's still out there, but I don't know if it still is.
Doesn't seem as big.
Yeah, I think a lot of people learned.
Yeah, yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Yeah. So I suppose maybe now we have more traders coming in to trading who are not they're not coming in from the robot angle. So I guess my theory is that if you want to be in control and you believe that you have an ability, an edge, a way of doing things that's going to work, then you will be a discretionary trader. And then if you're okay with just like, I don't really know how this works, but I need to find something that does, and I'll just let that go, and that, then maybe it's the robot thing. I think the other thing is that people who are really good at programming or have that bent, like that skill set, they're more inclined to go with automated stuff too.
Mhm.
The problem is there are a lot of issues with automated trading and curve fitting, and there are a lot of different approaches for validating your strategies. There are issues with brokers depending on how the system trades. So I think that, like, I like to automate my exit. So I do all of my thinking on the front end, and then I let the exit unfold in the automation.
Mhm.
So that's my preference. That's the way I like to do it, but that's not for everyone, right? So it just depends on what you like to do. So yeah, so those are my thoughts. Is that it can be an entry level thing. I talked to a guy. I've mentioned this many times before. I didn't meet him, but I talked to him on a webinar, or like on a call. I was introduced by a third party to a guy who sold EAs. He was in Las Vegas, and actually said to me, this is true. I think he's no longer with us, so I don't feel that bad talking about this, but this is the truth. This is what he said. He said,
Mhm.
"Why would you ever trade?" And this is a guy who sold these for a living. He said, "Why would you ever trade an EA or trading robot?" I can't remember what he said. One or the other. He said, "Why would you ever trade an EA, expert advisor? Because everyone knows they don't make money." And he literally, his business was to sell a no loss trading robot. So it was like a robot that never had a loss. Of
Uh,
course, it didn't have a loss. It would just blow up your account
at some point, yeah.
eventually. Yeah. So it would just, yeah. So it's sort of like a martingale thing. It wasn't quite martingale, but it was similar. So yeah. So it was a no loss train system. And he was preying on people's beliefs that there was a way to crack the code to the markets, and that you could just ride this robot into riches. And yeah, and I actually found, I looked up I saw his posts on different forums, like
Mhm.
trading forums, and I saw him actually formulating. It was really interesting. I saw his post in the forum, and I saw him actually formulating this idea for the strategy. And so I think he initially really did think that he had found the Holy Grail. Like if
Mm.
you go back and watch his posts, but in the end, he realized it wasn't, and he said, "Well, I'll just sell it then," right? And then add this little component, this risk component of you know no stop loss, right? Sort of thing.
Yeah,
So yeah.
yeah.
Anyway, so yeah. I mean, there are different approaches, I guess. What are your thoughts on the whole automated thing?
Yeah, I don't know a whole lot of automated traders. Like I don't do any automation myself, but I've always had the concept that everybody's better, or most people anyway, are better off starting off as a discretionary trader, building up your system, figuring out something that works. Then you get to know the nuts and bolts of execution, and the places where automation could mess up in your system or whatever, and then turning that into some sort of automation where there's like partial automation, or if it's complete automation, right? And those are the few people that I've seen who've gone that route seem to have success with that, and that seems to be like the best way to do it. But but like you said, if you have a engineering mindset or a programming mindset, I think that's probably a good place to start, maybe. And I think that I've seen a lot of people try to go down that route, and maybe like this guy you're talking about, he kind of became cynical afterwards, right? Like, oh, that this automation thing doesn't work, and so he just started just selling a robot or whatever. But I've seen quite a few people do that, like, oh no, I've tried every single permutation of this thing, and there's no way that this can work. There's no way that the moving average crossover can work, right? And so I think that could be part of it also. I know that one of the reasons that robots fail is because you didn't create it yourself, and you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. You don't know the risk reward. Whoever made it is back testing it over 1 year or 2 years or whatever, and all that kind of stuff leads to this bad rap for automation. But I think like you mentioned, you can use it for parts of your trading, and it does work in those instances. And like in my store, I have Adam stuff. We both know Adam, and he does the trailing R multiple exit EA. But I think it can work. I think most people are better off starting with discretionary trading, because most people don't have a programming mindset. But I think that ultimately, if you can turn your discretionary idea into some sort of automated thing and kind of get more, quote, passive income, I think that's a good thing. But otherwise, just stick with what works.
It's interesting, isn't it? Like, you could argue that if you have a profit target, that's really like automating your exit, right? Because you don't have to be there to. You're like, and the other thing is, if you spend a lot of time around automated traders, what they tend to have is like a suite of strategies. Like they'll start out with one or two or whatever, but they usually end up with a lot of different approaches if they're like if they stay down this path. And what I find fascinating about that is that any given strategy by itself is probably just like, it's okay. But because they're adding them together, they get the multiplicative effect or whatever, where you know what I mean? You're having these wildly different approaches, and it really works in the end, because they're trading like 15 of them or whatever. I heard an interview. There was a guy who had like thousands of them, and he would use that following week, he would use whichever ones were making the most money last week. So he was like kind of like playing the hot hand theory, which is interesting too. So so I think, like, for example, like if you took a discretionary trader who is doing well, and you took an automated trader who's doing well, I would guess that the discretionary trader may only have 2 or 3 strategies, but the automated trader probably has more than 10. That would be my guess. Like I would just say as the mean sort of average, type of thing. I could be wrong there, but that's my operating hypothesis on that. And so I think that's interesting, because a lot of people that are coming from discretionary to automation, they may look at an automated strategy and go, well, that's crap. Like, that's not very good. Like, do you know what I mean? That's a 1.3 profit factor or whatever. Like, but they're not thinking about the fact that you might have 15 of these going. So, and it's a different type of babysitting. Whereas with discretionary trading, you have to babysit the charts in terms of, like, you have to catch the trade, you have to see it to catch it, or have an alert that's sent to you if you semi-automate that or whatever. Whereas with the automated traders, they're just making sure that, like, nothing's breaking. Like, you know what I mean? It's like everything's running. We don't have any server downtime, all of my risk is right, and I'm not in any terrible drawdowns in any of my accounts and things like that. So they're just doing a lot of sort of babysitting, kind of like, I guess, you would do if you were an IT guy, and like babysitting servers or whatever, making sure nothing's maxed out or has a virus, or they're kind of doing that, just making sure that everything looks good, just checking in. So it's not like you're just going to sip Mai Tais on the beach and not do anything if you're an
Yeah.
automated trader. It's just a different type of work. That's all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
you see that a lot more, I guess. It's more apparent in the stock market, where
Mhm.
they have multiple strategies, and because there's so many stocks, you can't. It's probably not a good idea to trade just one strategy across all those stocks. But if you read something like what Nick Raj does, right, his research into the stock market, Australian stock market, um, yeah, you put these things together and you change you change the settings on this one, you change the settings on this one, you put them all together, and they make up for their weaknesses. So if you want to,
Yeah.
go down that route, check out those automated stock traders.
Yeah. Yeah. There's some good stuff out there for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
All right,
Yeah. I would agree. Yeah. Thanks,
cool.
you.
Thanks, Walter.
See ya.
Yeah.
All information in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and is not trading or investment advice.